Hello students, I can confidently assume that your preparation is going on well and you must be receiving the collection of the short notes of different relevant articles. Please continue to go through that. And as one of the major concerns of the students have always been in international relations, especially the politics part. So from today onwards, we will be doing the contemporary politics. For this year's mains examination, lot of topics have become very important. That is why it took a lot of time for me to just segregate the content. In fact, the situation is like the word order itself is changing, and when word order is changing, the reference points, the various issues, range of questions are possible, and many things are relevant, like the changing world order, India-China relations, Quad, United Nations, NPT. So many things are important. So today I will be discussing with the first topic, and let us analyze the importance of this particular topic. What are its expected questions? So the first topic in the syllabus is topic 7, and this topic has 3 subtopics: the rise of superpowers. So though this topic deals with the rise of USA and the rise of former USSR, but in present time we can contextualize this particular topic, and we have to prepare one answer on the rise of China and its geopolitical and geoeconomic implications for the world and India in particular. So how India should be managing the China challenge and the implications of China's rise on the world order. Now, is strategic and ideological bipolarity, this is not very relevant, so it is enough if you go through the notes. Arms race and Cold War, this also I don't think is very important now. The nuclear threat globally, you can prepare for short notes. I will show you the analysis of the questions. NAM is always important and NAM will always come. And there are chances of question on non-aligned movement also, as well as on India's policy of non-alignment. So non-aligned movement, or probability of the question is because after completely ignoring, Prime Minister Modi has tried to revive the NAM platform at the time of COVID crisis, that this platform can be used for India's leadership. And as you know that India is fast becoming the de facto ally of US with the signing of or with the signing of the 4 agreements. There is always a possibility of a question on the future of India's strategic autonomy or non-alignment as a policy. Now, collapse of USSR, this can be a traditional question. You can just refer to the notes. Unipolarity and American hegemony. This is again very probable area, unipolarity and American hegemony. So there can be a question on the status of US hegemony. There can be a question on China's challenge to US hegemony, and besides China there are other challenges to US hegemony, and the relevance of non-alignment as a foreign policy for India in the contemporary world. Fine. So these are the topics which are important. Next is, if we see the title itself, changing international political order, means how the world order is changing, and you can expect a question on post-pandemic world order and India's foreign policy. So these are the probable questions which we will be discussing in the subsequent lectures. Today I will be discussing the post-COVID world order and India's foreign policy in the era of pandemic and its assessment. So these are the probable questions. Now if you see the trend, previous year questions, 2 questions every year are almost every year are coming from this topic itself in the same section. So if you prepare these questions, you are in a very safe zone. Fine. So there was a question on the 17th NAM summit in Venezuela. So now, because no NAM summit is going to happen right now, we will focus on relevance of NAM. In 2019, there was another question, identify the benefits of multipolar world. This is again relevant because the topic is changing international political order. Now, as the political order is changing, whether we will be entering from Pax Americana to Pax Sinica, or we will be witnessing the multipolar world. What does the multipolar world means for India? How India looks at the multipolar world, and to what extent multipolar world is in India's interest. Now again, 2018, without gap, they have asked this question, the significance of NAM as a unique contribution of the non-Western world to the world politics. So this is again critical evaluation of NAM for 20 marks. Next, 2018, discuss the consequences of Trump's America First and Xi Jinping's China Dream. So they can ask you a question on US China relations at present and their implications for the world order. They can also ask question on China's foreign policy under Xi Jinping or Xi Jinping's foreign policy concepts. Again, there was a question on the development of advanced missiles technology, and a nuclear threat by North Korea has challenged the American hegemony in Southeast Asia. Evaluate in context of the recent developments in the region. So this question is from challenges to US hegemony. Now, North Korea was in news in 2017, but right now Iran is in news. So, I have just thought that we'll do this question. How nuclear Iran is a threat to US hegemony in the Middle East? Explain the above statement in context of recent developments in the region. Next, so not even a gap, every year the question is being asked. Do you endorse the view that the end of bipolarity and the rise of multiple regional organizations has made NAM more or less irrelevant? So we will have to prepare a question on NAM. Then examine in brief the rise and fall of Cold War, so for which you can completely rely on the class notes. But we will also modify this question, and we will see that whether the current state of in US-Russia relations and US-China relations can be considered as a new Cold War. Discuss the collapse of USSR and its impact on world politics. This is a general question. Now in 2014, there was a question on Ukraine crisis as a product of power politics and geopolitics. Because in 2014, this was in news because of annexation of Crimea. So now there can be, this question can be an expected question, that the crisis is unfolding between Armenia and Azerbaijan is a product of geopolitics. So we'll try this question. Who was Mr. X? Elaborate his approach to foreign policy. So there is a class, in the class notes you will find George Kennan, who gave the containment policy. Identify the challenges to American hegemony. I think this particular question can cover almost all areas related to US hegemony. Expected question can be Chinese challenge to US hegemony, Russia's challenge to US hegemony, not very important, Turkish terrorism, but BRI as a challenge, Polar Silk Road, Digital Silk Route, and how US is responding to these challenges. Again, the plausible aims of NAM in post-Cold War period. So there can be a question of the plausible role of NAM in post-pandemic period. Comment on the recent trends on Russia's foreign policy. So instead of Russia is not that much in news. We can focus on the recent trend in China's foreign policy. Define geopolitics and account for its prevalence in the modern nuclear age, that we will discuss. How to differentiate the post-Cold War global order from its predecessor. So this question can be modified. How to differentiate the post-COVID global order from its predecessor. Russian foreign policy is described as tyranny of the weak. Now Russia is not that important. Economic determinants of Chinese foreign policy, ideological basis of Chinese foreign policy, determinants behind China's assertiveness. The New World Order as conceived by US is an effort to establish American century in military terms, as America's economic and industrial dominance of last 50 years is lost. So American hegemony पे prepare करना है. Short note on Pax Americana. Expected questions. Analyze the possible features of post-pandemic international political order. What is the future of multilateralism in the age of multipolarity? And discuss the theoretical debates on hegemony with reference to the hegemonic stability theory. So today I will be starting with the changing international political order and India's foreign policy. Changing international political order and changing international political order. Fine. So basically, first of all, you should understand what is political order or world order. Fine. So political order. Order is always related to the set of rules. You make certain rules, and those rules, they can be formal rules, they can be informal rules, and these rules establish some sort of order. So it may happen that some states start violating those rules. So how the order changes, how a paradigm changes when someone starts violating and the other countries do not have enough will or capacity to punish the violators. Okay. So if we see the Oxford Dictionary, political order is a defining set of rules, or the concept of political order provides us with a conceptual framework on a conceptual framework to understand international politics. Now, if we do not have a conceptual framework of international politics at present, it will be very difficult for us to deconstruct the system or to deconstruct the various developments that are happening. So we need to understand the world order, because you cannot understand India's engagement in Quad or India-US cooperation without the reference of the word order. Fine. Now, whenever a question on word order comes, you can always give reference to Henry Kissinger and his famous book, The Word Order. And Henry Kissinger says that there has never been a truly word order. Fine. Or nations have never had this convergence on the word order. So actually, the true word order never existed, and different countries, they had their own perceptions on the word order. And he says that up till now there are 4 historical visions of the word order. One is the Westphalian, state-centric word order. Second has been the Islamic word order, the concept of Dar ul Islam. The Chinese word order based on their concept of Middle Kingdom complex. And the liberal international economic order based on Pax Americana. So these shared visions have not been there. Different visions of word order have always been there. Like India has been always supportive of the Westphalian word order. Our Panchashil is based on this idea. So Westphalian word order is where the principle of nation's sovereignty remains very, very sacred, non-interference in the domestic affairs. In present time, Russia, China, they often talk about the Westphalian world order. Then the other Islamic world order represented by, you can say, Al-Qaeda or ISIS, who are trying to establish the Islamic State. China has its own vision of world order, and US world order, we have seen 2 world orders in the recent history, but there are competing visions also. Now what Henry Kissinger suggests is that today our world is in the state of chaos. And this chaos is very dangerous because earlier we were not so much interconnected. But right now we are also living in an increasingly interconnected world. So the chaos can have a multiplier effect. In fact, there is a scholar, Parag Khanna, who has also used the chaos theory and the butterfly effect to explain the post-pandemic world order. Fine. So he says that the world is in the state of chaos. It is more dangerous because of interdependence. And the problem is there is no coherent visions of the world orders. US vision is different, Chinese vision is different, ISIS or Islamic fundamentalists, their vision is different. So first of all, there is an absence of a coherent vision. Next, we also do not have any effective platform which has its legitimacy to discuss and evolve a vision. So what Henry Kissinger says that we are in the state of chaos and a dangerous time, and we are in the need of a vision. Once the vision is clear and the world order is possible only when there is a consensus on the rules between the major powers. If we take the time of the Cold War, though the relations between USA and USSR were extremely contradictory, yet they had a shared vision. The shared vision was that one is a communist world and the other is the capitalist world, and the security and the stability depends upon the nuclear deterrence. So presently we do not see the coherent vision. The credibility of the existing multilateral institutions have gone so down, including UN Security Council, that there is no platform as such where the major powers, the way they were discussing at the time of the end of at the end of Second World War, this is missing. So when we talk about the changing international political order, we have to take some point as a reference point with respect to which we can understand the things are changing. Fine. So the changing international political order means you should know order before the change. What was the order before the change? So scholars are basically saying that the pandemic will change the order in very structural sense. In a very structural sense means very fundamental way the world order will be changing. So what was the world order before? The world order before We can say from 1991 onwards, which is known as the post-Cold War world order. And this post-Cold War world order can be described in two ways, either as the globalization or as Pax Americana or American hegemony. And this world order and its beginning can be seen in 1989 when during the Gulf War US has assumed the leadership So more than 34 countries have contributed their forces under US leadership to fight against Saddam Hussein. So 1989-91 onwards, you can say the global world order and hegemony of USA has been established. And whatever crisis happening, US has been on the forefront of each and every crisis. Okay? So, how do you explain that post Cold War world order has established US hegemony or leadership because US has been at the forefront of formulation of the rules, establishment of the institutions, and the crisis manager. So US has been at the forefront of every crisis that is happening. Fine. So this was an era of US leadership, but the question is whether the countries or the societies they have actually accepted USA's leadership or they were too weak to oppose, too weak to counter, fine. So this was the situation of, you can say, the world order. Now the world order has changed and something of great significance has happened, and that great significance is that COVID-19 is the first crisis, first global crisis since the end of Second World War where we see no US leadership. Where we see no US leadership. So from 1991 onwards, US was undisputed leader, whether people loved US or hated US. And to the extent that the American political class was describing US as the indispensable nation. This is the same way that once the Britishers used to say that the sun never sets, the sun of the British Empire never sets. So same hubris, same hyperbole that US is the indispensable nation. But the COVID crisis is the first, why it is so significant that it is the first major crisis without any leadership on part of USA. And more than that, we also see that USA has not even has not been even in a position to handle the crisis properly in domestic arena. So it has certainly put a huge question mark on the credibility of US hegemony, and this also shows that we should start singing the obituaries of the end of US hegemony. No action, and such a bad action at home that large number of deaths, lack of preparedness is something that shows that US is today not in a position to manage either the global affairs nor even the domestic challenges, and certainly the decline of US hegemony. Now, the US hegemony, once the US hegemony declines, the world order automatically changes, because the world order is that of the Pax Americana, and as hegemony is declining, the world order automatically changes. Fine. So basically, pandemic has not as such changed this metamorphosis of the world order was already going on since long. Now the question is how world order changes. How world order changes. Fine. So as you know, the order means norms, rules, and when these norms are not being followed, obviously the cracks in the order will start appearing. So, the first crack, or who started destroying the order, the first crack was seen by, or first destruction of the order made by US was seen in Kosovo crisis, US took unilateral actions, destroyed its own world order, its own global norms. Then invasion in Iraq in 2003, where US itself undermined its institutions which it has built, like UN Security Council. Again, US itself started destroying the world order. Then we see China. Once China was integrated in WTO, China had not stick to the promises, stick to its guarantees, adherence to the rules of WTO. Rather, China kept on flouting the norms for its own advantages. Once China got the benefit of its integration of its economy, China started asserting its powers. So primarily from 2008 onwards, we see China asserting itself, China flouting the norms, China building the artificial islands, China not observing the dictates of the Permanent Court of Arbitration in South China Sea, China not observing the norm of post-Cold War world order, that is democracy, China repressing Uyghurs. So China started destroying the world order. Now the basic problem of these two countries is suffering from a disease called megalomania. So when you become too big, see, it is difficult, like it is easier to come to power, but it is difficult to maintain yourself in power, to handle itself in power. So we see both these countries going for unilateralism, aggressive stance, and themselves flouting the world norms. Then we see Russia, in 2014 annexed Crimea. This is you can say a flagrant violation of the international norms of the post-Second World War and post-Cold War period. So when the countries who were supposed to protect the norms, they themselves started flouting, or when the country which is to ensure that others follow the norms first destroys the norms itself and is unable to restrict the others, it means that there is no order. It means that we are in the state of chaos. Fine. So ultimately, the chaos started within few years after the end of Cold War, and each country is going ahead with their own visions, which Kissinger says lack of coherent visions and lack of the consensus, and everyone started destroying the world order. The situation of the institutions like IMF, World Bank, WTO, climate change talks, UN Security Council, it all shows the impact of the crisis. So, how do we define the present world order? The present world order can be defined as is actually there is no order and it is all chaos. Like in case of Holy Roman Empire of a medieval time, it used to be said that it was neither holy nor empire. So, saying there is no order, it is in the state of chaos. Fine. Now, what is the significance of chaos? Chaos is also a necessary intervening stage whenever old changes into new. So basically, the chaos which we are witnessing is not something unexpected. It is something very, very normal feature. And the chaos was supposed to happen. And the pandemic has shown this chaos. So if we see the hegemonic stability theory, or if we see the polarity of power thesis, this polarity of power thesis given by Kenneth Waltz, Mearsheimer, unipolarity is never stable, because the law of nature is balancing. So this disbalance can never continue for long. Fine. So unipolarity was always supposed to be short. Again, same thing, that the one country or one nation establishes order, then free riders emerge. Same is the hegemonic stability theory. It suggests that after some time the hegemony ends, because hegemon overstretch itself, and while hegemon provides the public good, the free riders take the advantage. There may not be any decline in the power of hegemon in absolute sense, but the power of hegemon declines in the relative sense. The time always comes when hegemon will not find it possible anymore to provide the leadership or to manage the public good. This happened with Britain. This happened with US also. So many people believe that the Trump is responsible for the decline of US hegemony. But the theories of international politics tell something else. If we go by structural realism, the structure of the international politics constrains the choices of the actors. So, Trump or no Trump, whosoever would have been in power, in US hegemony had to be declined, because it never happens that the sun sets. Sun may be setting, or sun will always set. This is the law of nature. So normally the Trump is blamed for the decline of US hegemony, but that in one way also we can say that the Trump is genuine in the sense that others in US, others in Washington have not been ready to accept. So he has accepted the fact that today US is not in a position to fulfill its global commitments, and US has to first recover itself. US has to give the primacy to itself. So America first has to be natural. The domestic policy, like foreign policy, begins at home, and America has to set its house in order. So the withdrawal was essential, because the system of whatever system that has been established, countries like China not following the norms, emerging as free riders, not sharing the burden, only going ahead with the advantages. So Trump took this opportunity. He actually dared to accept that US is no more a leader, and it is useless if we try to pretend ourselves to be the leader. Same thing like USSR, even when it became hollow from inside, but to maintain its superpower status, USSR dragged itself for the 10 years in Afghanistan conflict. So the US hegemony is almost over. There is no doubt about it. Plus, there has this is not something, the creation of any human being. Rather, this has been inevitable course of the history. The structure of international politics is like that. The withdrawal of US from Iraq, Syria, from Afghanistan, US attempts to build the Quad show that US alone will not be able to manage the world order or the rules of law, and it has to build the coalition. So regarding the present world order, there is no doubt that the Pax Americana is over. Now the question is whether we are living in the state of Pax Sinica, Chinese hegemony, as China appears to be everywhere, be it Middle East, be it Europe, be it Latin America, be it moon, be it space, China everywhere. But it will be wrong to say that we are living under the Pax Sinica. This pandemic has actually, China tried, because the world is not accepting the leadership of China. China is not capable also of providing the leadership. China has its own domestic issues. So what we have seen is Pax Sinica, before it emerges, has ended, and pandemic has again given the blow to Pax Sinica. So China is what? Like Pakistan, China is a country where a party has a state. The legitimacy of Chinese Communist Party depends upon its ability to sustain the higher economic growth, and because the pandemic has resulted into deglobalization, Chinese are bound to face the challenge, and they have to shift the attention of their people towards the nationalistic agenda. Now there is a question mark why China is showing such an aggressive behavior with Vietnam, with India at the time of pandemic, with Australia, with Canada, why it is destroying its goodwill. We can say that this is the last, like, China realizes that the future world is not going to be the world of China's hegemony, and before it becomes evident, China should, at least if they have a power, they should at least get the feel of their power. So besides megalomania, the assertiveness and the aggressiveness of China itself shows that Pax Sinica is also not the future. So where the world is heading towards? What is the future of the world order? The world is moving towards the multipolar world order. Fine. The world is moving towards the multipolar world, and always it happens when the superpower collapses, fine. So the pandemic has not only shown the weakness of US, it has also shown the dangers of Pax Sinica and gives stronger reasons to the middle powers like Australia, India, Japan, Vietnam to cooperate. Fine. So we can expect a multipolar world order where these middle powers, how they take the options, will shape the future world. Normally, the multipolar world is full of chaos, but since the countries, for example, India, Australia, Japan, they have a tradition of democracy and a commitment for the global or multilateralism. If they provide the leadership, we can make the world safe, peaceful, and harmonious in accordance to the vision of Indian civilization, the cosmopolitan vision of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. So I hope this discussion has helped you in streamlining the chaos of the ideas which is happening around the world.